The dispute over who's to blame for what just happened in Kremenchuk leads to the larger question about what exactly constitutes state terrorism in the Ukrainian conflict. Zelensky accused Russia of so-called state terrorism after a fire in one of Kremenchuk's malls that he claimed was caused by his opponent's missiles reportedly killed 18 people so far. The Russian Ministry of Defense swiftly responded by revealing that their country actually hit an arms stockpile that was located next to that mall, which caused the hidden munitions to explode and create a fire that spread to what it described as that non-operating site. The dispute over who's to blame for what just happened leads to the larger question about what exactly constitutes state terrorism in the Ukrainian conflict. Kiev of course believes that all collateral damage that Russia inadvertently causes to civilian infrastructure qualifies as such, while Moscow's stance is that their opponent's militarization of residential areas is what's truly state terrorism. If Russia was really carrying out so-called genocide in Donbass and Ukraine, then it would just carpet bomb their cities instead of risking its troops' lives by having them fight street-by-street battles against the militants who are holed up in residential areas there. Moreover, if wanted to terrorize Ukrainians, then it could just bomb those on Kiev's beaches. Building upon that last point, it's telling that Ukrainians in the capital are so calm amidst Russia's alleged genocide of their own people elsewhere in the country that they've been thronging to their city's beaches on the Dnieper River all this month. This isn't the attitude of a people who are experiencing a so-called second Holocaust like the US-led Western mainstream media, MSM, has ridiculously implied, but of folks who genuinely feel safe because they don't seriously think that Russia's going to terrorize them by bombing a bunch of families on the beach like it would if it was genociding them. Back to the battlefront further east, people are unable to utilize the humanitarian corridors that the Russian armed forces, RAF, agreed to create for them precisely because Kiev wants to exploit them as human shields in order to stall their opponent's advance. President Putin elaborated at length in July 2021 on his belief in the historical unity of Russians and Ukrainians, which is why he wants to keep civilian casualties in this conflict to an absolute minimum. This explains why he'd rather order his troops into harm's way fighting street by street to liberate those cities than to simply carpet bomb them. While Kremenchuk is near the front, its secret arms stockpile that was recklessly located right next to a non-operating mall supplies Kiev's forces and thus keeps the conflict unnaturally dragging on longer than if NATO wasn't exploiting that former Soviet republic as part of its proxy war on Russia. This explains why the RAF targeted it, after which the resultant fire spread to the neighboring building that Zelensky hysterically said was housing over 1,000 people in spite of footage showing an almost completely empty parking lot with some uniformed soldiers interspersed with the very thin crowd. The real state terrorism therefore wasn't Russia hitting a secret arms stockpile, but Kiev hiding it literally right next to a non-operating mall as part of its strategy of militarizing residential areas so as to delay its opponent's advance and deter strikes against its stockpiles far behind the lines. Not only that, but its much more brutal militarization of residential areas at the front is unquestionably an act of state terrorism, albeit one that's tacitly supported by the US-led West for Machiavellian reasons of military convenience related to indefinitely prolonging the conflict as long as possible.